Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. If you are new to the channel and interested in being part of the solution to our education crisis, I hope you will subscribe to be notified when I make new content. If you're already a subscriber, thank you. Please like and share this broadcast so others can benefit from what I'm about to share with you today. And I would like to let you know that each of these shows is an opportunity to hear from people who are working to improve education in America any way they can. This one, believe it or not, is no exception, despite the fact that I'm speaking to a student, now a college student. We're speaking about his experiences as a high school student at a private prep school in Vermont. Sometimes one way that people help improve education is by telling their stories, coming forward and sharing what has happened to them, often behind closed doors in educational institutions, so the rest of us can be aware of trends, of ideology, of philosophy, of behavior, et cetera, that is going on, that is the manifestation of the crisis. It's not always in big headline grabbing events or curricula or whatever. It's often in the day-to-day goings on inside schools. And when people are brave enough to step forward and tell their stories, it's very, very helpful. So I hope you will appreciate what we're about to hear as much as I did when the story was told to me. And please join me in welcoming my guest, Eli, to the show.
Deb, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I love the intro. I love how you pointed out that not everything that happens is major headline grabbing news. A lot of it happens day to day life. There are many cases like this that go unrecorded, and like mine, until a year ago, until I finally uploaded my Substack, no one heard of it. Yet, when I told people were like, well, just a little bit about it. I said, oh yeah, my school went through my stuff. They think that can't happen. That's so invasive. That's crazy. So I'm like, I think it's right to publish that because this just cannot.
No, it doesn't always. I mean, some of the most compelling stories actually don't get told. Before we jumped on here, we were talking a little bit about Jody Shaw, and we would never know about all the goings on at Smith, which I'm sure is not unique to Smith, but the intricacies of that, how long it went on, how abused she was, all of these things. If she had not had the guts to come forward and speak up, nobody would know. So it's not always going to be those headline grabbing stories. And yet some of the worst offenses, some of the worst things that are going on in education are happening behind closed doors. And I think your story is a good example. For background, what he's referring to with his Substack is a Substack that he wrote in January of last year. So it's been a year almost exactly. Yeah. It's entitled, "They Searched My Computer Over False Allegations, My Experience with Vermont Academy's Woke Partisan Abuse." So to bring people watching sort of up to speed, give us the sort of Reader's Digest version of what exactly happened to you there.
Sure. So my name is Eli. I start talking about my life, about the experience. Actually, the first part of my headline, which I was advised to write, it was very different. Before I was advised to make it more gripping, was that day I was called into the office. Did not know why I was there. They said, you have to bring us your computer and your phone. They said, we are going to look through them. No, just give us your passwords. You have been accused, at least. And then they asked me, they didn't even say what I was accused of. Okay, well, I did know one thing. There's a kid who I was had disagreements with, and he and I would make each other uncomfortable, but I took it to social media, which I should not have done. But so they said, here's the thing. And then they asked me, but then that was no reason to go through my stuff, and which the school in the contract. So what they said was, they asked me, is there porn on this computer? Which there wasn't, which is so crazy. And they asked me, is there KKK material on this computer? Which was also crazy, very anxiety-provoking question, being accused of that stuff, which there was not either. And then they asked me, there might not be, they actually, it was so weird. I don't know, because I never talked about this. They said, oh, there won't be abortion footage or something like that on your computer. They were the ones who thought of that. I don't know. I was not thinking that. It was so uncomfortable.
So going back to the person you had issues with, that when you say you took it to social media, can I assume from that you just were like bickering with this person on social media, or you
Yeah,
posted something that
I
you disagreed with them about?
I didn't post it. I
Oh,
sent it to him. I would send him stuff
oh.
online, which which was because often they think it's like worse if it's viewed on if someone sends something online if someone says something in person, and there definitely is room for that, because like someone says something online that cannot be like undone, that can be screenshotted, but if you say something in person and unless like their camera is there, there's like no
So
harm.
was this happening like in private messages or comments under a
Comments.
post? Comments under posts. You guys were just like bickering about something in comments under a
Mhm.
post, basically. Okay.
Right.
But what stands out to me, even to this point in your story, is the adults involved. Okay, so he has
Mhm.
an issue with you. You guys are in
Mhm.
comments, and at some point he goes and complains to the powers that be. All right.
Mhm.
What is amazing to me is you guys were in high school,
Mhm.
right, at a prep school where presumably, and I went to prep school, so one of the
Mhm.
whole things that they claim they do is instill independence and teach you to be on your own more. It's prep school,
Mhm.
preparation for college, where
Mhm.
mommy and daddy and everybody isn't around to solve your
Mhm.
problems. Oh, by the way, you are teenagers. And
Mhm.
so what is amazing to me is like no one's actually hurt. There were no threats of violence. There's nothing, like that would rise to the level where adults need to get involved. You got two teenage boys bickering. Even if you were going, you're a jerk and who knows. And
Yeah.
just the fact that it was on social media is not enough in my adult opinion. Okay. Um, but at no point did they say to him or even to you, look, you guys are having a fairly public
Right.
feud. This is not a good idea, and
Mhm.
it doesn't give a good community feel to our community. Work it out, like figure it
Right.
out. Not in the public eye. If you need some help, like an intermediary to mediate between the two of you to work this situation out between you, that's fine. We're happy to help with that, but we're not
Right.
going to fix it for you. Deal with this.
That sounds like restorative justice in a way. And like if there's ever a case for
Way it's
restorative
supposed to
justice,
work.
would have been this case. No one
Right.
was being harmed. No, it was just people being annoyed, and like we were kids at the time. Instead, like restorative justice is being used for like violent crimes against like victimless people.
Right.
Like, and that's what schools are using. Like, no, like if there's time for restorative justice, it would be this time. But this just but like they sure as hell didn't practice it here.
It sounds like they take, one person's say, and they're now going to go on a fishing expedition
Mhm.
into your phone, your laptop to
Mhm.
look for things based on allegations. And I mean, because teenagers are always honest about what people have done and said. Certainly, they never make stuff up to get somebody in trouble. When would that ever happen? I mean, this just makes me wonder as an adult, like, where were the adults, the real adults? Like, real adults hear a teenager say something like this, like, do you have evidence? Which should have been the
Mhm.
first question for the accuser, because
Exactly.
you have to wonder, if I'm the dean or I'm the head, master of the school or head of school, and somebody said stuff about me, somebody said, oh, we heard you were like doing something to the kids, I would be like, bring it. Where's the evidence?
Right.
So why aren't the kids, this is just human decency. Why, never mind civil rights. Why aren't they holding
Mhm.
themselves to the same standards they would want
Mhm.
for themselves? So that's the
Exactly.
first thing that stands out about me, is that they were treating you guys like there's something violent was about to occur, which it wasn't, and
Mhm.
that like you were little babies that need adults to intervene and solve your problems, except it's not even a solution to take one
Mhm.
person's word
Right.
and do it. It's weird.
Mhm.
So what happened next? So they go, they made you believe that they had every right in the world to get commandeer your
Right.
passwords and your laptop and everything, right?
Right. Like it's because as we talked about, they have like a contract called their like in technology policy that says the staff can do that, and it's actually on the internet, and it's on isuu.com, and it's really creepy. Like they definitely don't tell us like the parents like on their they don't put it on their public website because parents don't want their stuff that they pay for
Right.
search gone through, because that's a violation of not only the students' rights but also the parents' rights as well, because they're the ones who pay for the stuff they might they and so they just were without the excuse. They said, "You have to give us your. We need to see you've accused of doing stuff that's wrong, and if you don't show us, we're going to kick you out." And as you pointed out before, that like if I could have said, well, that like if they kick me out for not showing them, that would look much worse on them than it would on me.
Right.
But I still thought like, okay, I could probably. I didn't want to fight with them. I was like, here, there's something really bad. I forgot that, like, they move everything. So all those photos that they said were offensive were old, like really old. Like when I was like 2016, when I was like 13, or when I was like 14, my friends, I would send each other stuff. We would download them, and some of them they didn't even cite any of them. So they could have been like, for example, I put in my Substack that bumper sticker I saw when I was in Half Moon Bay. When I
Right.
was in Half Moon Bay, I saw this bumper sticker that said that had a pretty conservative message on it, and I took a picture of it, and I wonder, did they think, oh, he actually believes in that? And even
It's
though
irrelevant though. See, that's
exactly,
the thing is like, even if they found worst case, like worst case, they found all kinds of, like Der Stürmer, downloads or something like really awful on your laptop or something. This is America. It's a free country, and you're allowed to consume all kinds of
mhm,
material. Now, I suppose if they found like bomb making information, that'd be bad. But if there is just like you're looking at things for all they could know, and you could have said, like, I'm doing a report on, white supremacist organizations in America and how they're growing in strength or something. Why wouldn't you have that material? Like, that's called research. So
exactly,
simply looking at things does not make you right. Isn't that what we're
exactly.
hearing all the time about the books they're putting in the
Mhm.
libraries that people are complaining about? And they're saying, right to read, freedom of
And
speech, don't be a book burner. This is McCarthyism. But you had a picture of a bumper sticker, which could have been just kid old curiosity, like, check it out. Someone has a
it
bumper sticker,
was,
right?
it was.
And that somehow has all this meaning.
And then there were, I'll admit, it wasn't just that photo. I had some memes. They were harmless memes, and I
Right.
mean, I wasn't with the exception of like a few. I was not sharing. I was not sharing them. And the ones they said, and if you read the letter, they said we found, quote, several strong right wing information, which is not only horrible grammar but also shows. Yeah, no, Paul Rossi. If you see him, he tweeted about that. And he roasted
Yeah, no, I
the English
read
grammar.
the tech support thing, and I'm like, English is not this person's first language.
Unfortunately, it is. I'm not going to name him, but
Really? Oh,
I
that's
know he
shocking.
told me he grew up in Maine. He is not the child of immigrants or anything. He is
Wow. So that's just lousy
he's
grammar.
yeah,
I
lousy
thought
grammar.
this
He is a
person
what?
is like just learned English in the last 5 years. That's how bad it was.
Mhm.
Now,
No.
as far as the other thing that I'm noticing here is they listed, we found this, we found that, we found that. Did any of it align with the accusations that drove them to look through your stuff in the first place?
No. I mean nothing. I mean maybe, like, unless they think like unless they think like all people walk Fox News are the KKK, or unless they're like that delusional, like some people are. Nothing was KKK stuff. Sure as hell, nothing was abortion footage, and nothing was porn. Maybe I downloaded a magazine cover of like Vogue magazine or something. I was a
Right.
teenage boy, but
Yeah.
nothing was porn.
So we have an accusation that justifies us going through all your stuff. We went through all your stuff that it has nothing to do with even what this person said was going on. Like, why
Right.
would this person know what's in the bowels of your hard drive?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. I'll give him some context. For example, we were doing a research assignment, and when our research assignment, I went to a website, and this is something that VA has confirmed as well. And that, like, on the website, there was a pop up for an art show, a nude art show, where a man was like appearing nude, and it was censored, by the way. And then this kid thought, Eli, he thought I was like looking at porn. I clearly wasn't. It was clearly a pop up on a website to some
Right.
art show in New York City or something. And then he told the staff that I was watching porn based on something he saw months ago, which he actually I told him explicitly that was not porn. He said he knew, and then he just went back and then lied, said that I watched porn in class. And the thing is, he also threw other allegations at me as well. And the thing is, like, if someone makes me uncomfortable, someone does something bad to me, and I have to report it, I only say what they did that was harmful to me because I know that is enough information. And I said, like, you had a right to report when I sent that one joke to you because I thought you might like it. You had a right to report that one joke because that was true. But everything else, none of that was true. And so there should have been consequences. When I brought up to the VA, I said, hey, why aren't there consequences for this? They said, one, we look through everything, so false allegations shouldn't be a big deal because we will verify everything. That's what they said to me.
False allegations shouldn't be a big deal because we went through all your stuff and found out what was false, but no consequences for the
Mhm.
lying.
Right. No consequence for lying. And then
So,
they
I mean,
said
it's like
you
they're
should not.
missing the point.
Right.
Hi,
And then they
I'm
like they don't. And they said when I said right there free consequence, they said they treat that like that was back talk. They can't disagree with us. It's like some like these schools are like cults.
yeah. So, okay. Fast forward, they find a bunch of things, or they claim to have found a bunch of things that don't relate at all. No porn
Mm-hmm.
and no KKK material.
Mm-hmm.
Just other stuff that they were like, well, this is kind of not good. And we don't like this and we don't like
Right.
that. And oh my God, you surfed Breitbart, right? They found some stuff with Breitbart in your history from ages ago and the bumper sticker.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was their final conclusion about, when they said you have to leave? Why? What was their reasoning?
And so, okay, so this time, I will admit that it wasn't just what they found. They also told me you are not allowed to talk to people about this issue. And I was 15, and they said you can only talk to your parents. You cannot talk to any student. You don't talk to any teachers. But like that was just crazy. You don't go to me like that and then say, nope, you can't talk to anyone about this. And I might have talked about to another.
What was their
faculty
reasoning?
member. And then, so I talked to a few people about it. Oh, and then I confronted that. I didn't even confront him. I just walked by the student who accused me. I said, oh, what the I was like, dude, what's going on, dude? And then he said, I don't want to talk to you. I said, okay, I'll respect your restraining order. I joked. And then they used the word restraining order like a big deal, as if they meant that literally. And then they said you had to leave. I couldn't put the whole story, but it was not stalking, because if you ask someone a question once and then they walk away, so I walk away, so I walk the opposite direction back to my door, that's not stalking.
Again, even if you followed him to the door and said, dude, why did you do that to me, etc., unless you say I'm going to do X to you or whatever, just following you in the public spaces of the campus is not stalking. And even then, at most, what they would have been able to do is just say, hey, look, I know you're upset, but you're going to need to stay away from him. None of this is how people who work with kids, teenagers, young adults, whatever you want to call you guys, none of this reflects well on the adults, in my opinion. All of this says that they are very inept when it comes to handling the interaction of other people who are in their care. First of all, telling somebody you may not speak without a reason. Now, if they had positioned it to you and said, look, while we're doing this investigation, figuring out it's probably not going to be a good idea for you to interact with this other person, just let's not muddy the waters. We will get to it. Doubly so if they said we're investigating whether we want to hold them accountable for false allegations. So the less said, the better. Please just keep this to yourself, between yourself and your family, while we conduct this investigation. It sounds to me like you're reasonable enough person to be like, all right, that makes sense. Like, now I understand why you don't want me to say anything, but simply saying you may not speak to anyone about this at all. Oh, and P.S., there are going to be no consequences for somebody making false allegations. What that does to a person of any age, I don't care how old you are, it would happen to me, is putting a gag order on somebody without a logical reason why there's a gag order. When you've already said, even if that person lied, we're not going to do anything, it's a kind of an emotional abuse. They're basically saying, you're going to be alone. We're isolating you. We're not holding anyone accountable. There's not going to be any justice in this scenario. Justice is going to be whatever we decide it's going to be in isolation. And that's going to be the final say. You don't get to defend yourself. And like I said, even adults would have a hard time with that. Even adults would say, and I know I'm speaking from experience, because I had a recent situation where I was falsely accused of something at work at my old job. And I said to my boss, it didn't happen. Like what this other person called you and said happened to somebody from the outside of our organization. It never happened. Well, I don't want to, he said, she said. I said, but it didn't happen. I'm your employee, and I'm telling you it didn't happen. And what's more, I have evidence that supports my side of the situation. Don't you want to take a look at that evidence? No, I don't want to take a look at it. I'm putting you on a PIP. And I was so upset. I did exactly what you did. And I'm an adult. I went to the person who accused me. Now, I didn't say, what's going on? I went to them and I said, if there was a misunderstanding and you took something I said a different way than I intended it, I do apologize for that. but I would really appreciate it if you would clear this up, if you clear up this misunderstanding, because my boss thinks da 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 da. The next step was, how dare you go to that person? Well, I wouldn't have gone to that person if you let me try to clarify the situation myself. You put people in a no-win situation, they're going to behave however they feel they need to behave for self-preservation.
All
That's
right.
common sense. And I
Right.
feel like they set you up again. Like, let's
They
put him in
did.
a box and isolate him. And then the next action he takes, like any other isolated person would do, oh, we're going to punish him for that too.
Right. Like it was definitely not like a fair school where they like where everyone gets their own chance to just protect themselves.
No.
It's not innocent until proven guilty, of course not. And honestly, it's not even guilty until proven innocent, because guilty until proven innocent applies like if you can prove your innocence, you are let off. But no, it's just guilty assumed. They think you're guilty. Every little thing matters, and that's why I was like looking at like the letters, like I got kicked out years later, because I didn't see them until like I asked my parents, and I finally was allowed to. And I was like, and I thought, wow, they're just like, we're crying for so many little things.
Right.
And I mean, I don't want to bring up other students, and I'm definitely not going to name any of our students. This is not about students. This is about the adults. This is the problem. I have no grudge against the students, even the one who reported me, because that was so long ago, and he was also
Well, because mature adults would have held that person accountable and would have actually done right by that kid and taught him an important lesson, which is, look, you don't like Eli. Eli doesn't like you. You guys don't get along. Our advice is do not interact with each other. To the extent that we can keep you separated or whatever, great. If you want to restore some kind of relationship, we can help you with that. But other than that, here's what the only thing we're not going to tolerate from either of you is some kind of public feud. So cut the public feud, face off face to face in a controlled environment and deal with it, or don't. Those are your options. But this ends here. Like that's called discipline for both of you. And it would have been very fair. It would have been very fair to respect. Look, we don't want to get into the nitty gritty of who did what to whom first. That's irrelevant. You guys have a feud. That's what adults do. What they did instead was they picked favorites.
Oh, yeah.
They picked favorites. They triangulated. They allowed there to be a power struggle going on. And it sounds to me, and I know you don't want to name names, so we're not going to name names or anything, but it sounds to me like someone in this scenario, probably this other kid or his parents or somebody, had more power in the school community than you did. Because what were the words that they said to you about when they finally were going to kick you out?
Oh, they said like when they finally kicked me out, they said, "Well, the school's not your fit," and they were trying to. But this is like, you mean the thing about the community thing?
The
That was
community.
after. Oh, that was after. That was on the phone with the principal. So a few days after, they said, "Our community, we just can't have you. They say, yeah, we like you're a threat to our community, basically. Not
our
verbatim.
community. The
And
keywords being our community."
Right. And as you pointed out in my Substack, as Paul Rossi and I have this conversation, they define who the community is because based on like who they choose, who's closest to the administration, not by the general people. People were sad when I left. People like I wrote the Substack. I don't like randomly brag about every nice thing I get. But, like my friends in mountain biking, we did not ask them. My parents did not ask them. They like the biking team, not connected to the administration, of course, wrote me a letter saying, "We all miss you." And I put that letter, I was very careful to blur out every single name from that letter.
Right.
Because I definitely, and they said, "We all miss you." And our friends who miss us said they miss him. Like, wow, wait, the principal told me we just couldn't have you here. They told me I was a threat to their community. That
but what defined community? And you nailed it. Community is who we're closest, who's kind of bossing us around and telling us what to do, not the general population. If they had taken a vote amongst all the people you actually interacted with, your teachers, your coaches, your friends, they probably would have said, "Don't kick him out. What are you doing? This is crazy." So community is the wrong word there. What they actually mean is, our commanders, our bosses, or our who we report to, who writes our checks. And I don't even think that, we talk about woke, and you and I talked before the show about how the word it's an efficient tool in terms of shorthand, but it really encompasses a lot of attitudes and behaviors that come down to us versus them. So whether it's race-based or, the gender stuff or anything, it really comes down to grouping people, us, them, in and out, who fits, who doesn't fit. Politics is an easy excuse, right? Because that's another way to other people who aren't in our club. But when it comes right down to it, the difference between woke and not woke is this kind of collectivist power structure of a hierarchy of you're in or you're not in.
Yes.
There's no actual equal rights. There's no real equality. And because if there were, in your situation, everything would have been done differently. I told you I went to prep school and it was like court. If you were accused of doing something by another student, that student had to show, unless it was like obviously violent, and then they might have an intermediary, but that student had to show up and own that accusation. They couldn't just make an accusation and stay hidden somewhere in the dorm while you face the music. You got to face your accuser just like in the real world. And they had to bring evidence. And in addition, there was a review board that included your peers. There was always a peer member or two on the disciplinary review board so that it kept people honest. It kept the administration honest. It kept the teachers honest, because otherwise you have that power structure. And they know that gossip is going to get out. They know that people are going to, so-and-so was kicked out or so-and-so got disciplined. If you have student members, there's more trust. It's like my peers were there to represent the actual community of people who live here, sleep here, go to school here, pay the bills, the people whose parents write the checks and so on. And I just think this is really about that kind of woke, the kind of woke that says we can create this little insular community that makes up rules as it goes along, picks winners and losers, picks favorites, and isolate the people we want to isolate, and basically CYA. We can cover our butts and make up the rules as we go along. That's what it feels like to me.
It absolutely was. And I was thinking about that. I was actually thinking about how, like, in like legal cases and on some public schools, people who are false accused, they get like a chance, or accused in general get a chance to represent themselves, because if the evidence is like undeniable, which of course this was not the case for me.
That's right.
Because they know, like, even if they, no matter how much they presented, they would have lost. But I was not allowed to prevent a defense. In fact, though, there are people. My advisor actually wrote to me on Instagram message, which I didn't screenshot. I quoted it in the Substack. She said that she actually advocated for me after they kicked me out. She said that she tried very hard to have them change their minds and reverse their decision, but to no avail. And she left a few months after I got kicked out. So at the end of that school year, she left. Now
she probably saw it happen and didn't want to be associated with some place like that. I mean, if I had been there, I probably would have done the same, because what I feel happened to you is you were accused by the wrong person. When it comes right down to it, you were accused by somebody, probably not this kid, but their parent, who has a position of power. I mean, by the way, audience, I know this for a fact. I'm just not naming any names or positions because I don't want to give it away. But we do know for a fact that this person has some power and authority over people at the school. And so, having been accused, they had to find something, because to go back to the child of this individual and say, or to that person, and say, sorry, your accusations don't hold water, and nothing's going to happen to this kid. We're not just going to get rid of a kid because you don't like him and you don't want him at the school anymore. I think that's why they went on a fishing expedition, and that's why they came up with all these random, a meme and a picture and a this and a that, which had, as you pointed out, no relationship even to the allegations. They just found a bunch of stuff to hold against you and then said, well, we just can't have you here, which, by the way, is probably the only true thing they said. We can't have you here is code for we've been told we can't have you here.
Right. Exactly.
And so the ugly thing is that rather than own that, because they probably know they get sued to the wall of, like, one individual says they don't like you and don't want you here anymore, we can kick you out. If that news got out, every other kid in the school and every other parent will be like, when is my kid going to be next? What kind of crazy school is this? But they had to come up with some bogus reason and then put it on you to own it. And that's the part that just sickens me, from a place that where the head of school says that it's a place of compassion and inclusion and belonging.
Right.
And all that. And even went so far. Now this happened to you in 2018, right?
Yes.
Right.
Very
now I want, and we're going to talk some more about what happened after Eli left and went home because the story will curl your hair. It's like that they didn't just abuse this kid and say, now you're out and go home. But then they kept like communicating like with you. So we're going to go into that in a moment. But I want to talk about this letter from 2020 from the same individual that wrote to you and did all these things after the fact, who's supposedly so compassionate.
Thing is, I don't try to name people, but she's a public figure. If anyone
if you're a public figure, it's
figure.
No, it's open season. So this person is writing, this is post George Floyd. Okay. As many of you know, Vermont Academy stands at the beginning of a multi-year strategic initiative during which the mission of the school will be honed to meet the ever-evolving needs and demands of the 21st century, as if she would know what those are. Let me assure you that we are deeply committed, not just regular committed, but deeply committed during this process to examining how our curriculum and offerings can help us all become scholars and world leaders dedicated to the struggle against racism. There's no other struggles. Just that one's the most important one. Against hate is a whole sentence. Against hate. We have a sentence without a verb, folks. Education at its very best is always an invitation to virtue. Is it? Liar, liar, pants on fire. And we are unwavering in our commitment to a school experience steeped in values of equality and love. Does taking a kid's cell phone and computer and threatening him and saying, you better give it up or we're going to kick you out for not giving it to us. And then he does because he thinks he has nothing to hide. And then we're going to kick you out anyway, even though the allegations don't hold up at all. We had to dig a bunch of things up that are political in nature to conjure up we just can't have you here. Does that sound like equality and love to you? Not to me. The terrible acts of violence carried out against communities of color and the race, which is a weirdly racist statement, and the racism that we see expressed toward Black men and women in all corners of our nation are stunning and reminiscent of other haunting national memories. And while I recognize that much positive change has occurred in our country since the founding of Vermont Academy almost 150 years ago, I also know that our nation has so very far to travel in order to reach a place of true racial equality and justice. I'm here to reassure you that Vermont Academy is steadfast in its commitment to making this journey. And then there's a bunch of junk, blah, blah. I want to get to the bottom. I assure you of the following. Vermont Academy is an institution built upon an inviolable foundation of caring and openness. Don't talk to anybody. You're not allowed to tell anyone about what is going on in here. Here's a donut. Yes, they gave him donuts after they kicked him out of school. Would you want anything? Yeah, I want you to not be lying about me, but here's a donut. But we are.
Well, it was not just me. They gave donuts to everyone who came to visit me. So it was like a party and celebration.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was 15. What kid doesn't?
Who's going to turn down donuts? Right?
Now, if I could do it again, I would say no donuts. I'd say, I'd rather you tell me why I'm being kicked out and maybe give us their money back. But that never happened, of course.
Yeah, they kept the family's money. By the way, we are firm in our commitment to undermining the insidious power of racism, and we're willing participants in the struggle to make this world a better place. Struggle. How about insidious power? How about just end the sentence there? Right? The undermining the insidious power, period. How about the insidious power that is running the school, the known as, people of high wealth in positions of high power, whose kids have never heard no in their entire lives. So when little, who knows what the kid's name is, goes running and says, I don't like Eli, and he is doing these things that I don't like, and he says things I don't like, and he is making a fool of me on social media because he keeps disagreeing with me when he should just let me have my way, because that's all I've ever known in my whole life is having my way at every turn. The adults in the room say, no. The adults in the room say, solve your own problems, teenager. Solve your own problems, future leader of the 21st century. No, instead it was like, you go over there, you go, and you don't have to face him. You don't talk to him. We'll bully him for you. And that's exactly what they did. So he never heard no. His parents never heard no. And they threw you under the bus because you don't matter.
And I will admit, though, to be honest, on social media, it was definitely immature of me. And I did send the joke I should not have sent. And he was not very passionate about using social media. So I will take responsibility for that. I was 15. We were all kids.
Of that can be resolved with a little suspension or a letter, like you said, restorative justice.
Restorative justice would have been great. This is
teenage boys, teenage anyone, teenage boys, teenage girls, teenage anything. teenagers do dumb things. They act, they act rashly, impulsively. They get into little feuds. They use social media irresponsibly. This is not news, okay? And your use of social media, even while you're living on the campus, is still not happening in the classroom. Their purview is a little murky there. I'm sure there's a policy, but again, does this rise to the level of expulsion? I mean, I knew kids who got caught smoking pot that didn't get expelled. Okay.
And I know kids at that school, like I said, who were getting into physical fights, who were physically attacking students, who were using vile language. Like that one kid, if I talked about, who was like went up to me and said, "Oh, want to fight me?" And I said no. Then he said, "You're a P word," as Ben Shapiro says. Is bad language allowed in your podcast? I mean, your show?
I can't because they'll flag it. But the P word, I think we know what the P word is.
Yeah, he said, "You're a P word for not trying to fight me," and I'm like, okay, nice. I let that, and I let that slide, And this kid, and then he actually had to leave later after me because he did much worse things, and then he went back and got to graduate. He went back, and because his parents had a lot of power.
That's right.
And sometimes, like you don't need to talk about other schools what they tolerate kids. You can find out this school explicitly what they tolerate. Oh, and I have a friend, even better. I can't bring this up because he has no like evidence to back this allegation up. He said a student was like violently assaulted with a sex toy, and the kid who did that was not expelled.
Right. So
I cannot back that up, and I would definitely use like ever against the school, but like. There's definitely like why it was definitely not the most dangerous thing there.
I think the other thing is that the material they found, they claim they found that they dug around for in your history or whatever, Breitbart links and things where they said they were incendiary. And I would say to the audience, you ever have a school or anybody that's disciplining your child say that some content that they're looking at is incendiary. And by the way, it's not that they're looking at it publicly like, hey, everyone else in the whole school, look at what I'm looking at. You're talking about something that's privately searching.
Exactly.
Like, and it's not porn, so it's not explicitly against the rules. But define the word. And by the way, what if it were, not Breitbart, but Rachel Maddow or Joy Reid or somebody else? Why do they get to define what is and isn't incendiary for you to look at? That is a kind of a thought control that is, forget about openness and love and all of these terms. That is Stalin-esque. You're literally not allowed to look at Breitbart at Vermont Academy. You're not allowed to look at a bumper sticker. And I almost have to show the picture of this bumper sticker. I'm going to show the audience. I want you guys to go read the Substack so you get all these little details. We're talking around a lot of details because in the interest of time. But imagine you're looking at somebody's, history or in their photos and you find I'm a liberal's worst nightmare, a well-armed American white male. A picture a 13-year-old kid took and just left in their photos. This is a reason to expel someone from school. This is scary.
Right. This was countering their strong right-wing information and things that other students could not had, but could find offensive. And it's like, yeah. Like,
and even if they did, even if they found it offensive, isn't it the job of a prep school? We're preparing the leaders of the 21st century.
And the thing is, like, it's all about like lies. Because the thing is, I'm not a fan of Breitbart. I'll just say that. I don't like a lot of the ways they publish things. I like some of the writers, but I don't like most of it. I think that a lot of their headlines are just really clickbaity. That's my opinion. But I visited it all, so therefore they associate me with the site.
It's just not even relevant though, Eli. I mean, like I said, you could have been looking at their Sturmer. If your reasoning was, look, we at the school are, deeply committed to fighting racism. I don't see how I could be deeply committed to fighting something if I don't know the outer limits of it. So I keep hearing about white supremacy. So one day I looked it up and I found out this is where a lot of the white supremacists go. So I wanted to see what they say because, honestly, I've never really seen.
Have you ever heard of Daryl Davis?
Yes. He went with the KKK.
Yeah, I met him actually. He was such a cool person to talk to. I have a photo with him on my phone.
Yeah.
And and this is amazing because like
You right winger, you met with a black man who broke bread with the KKK. Oh my.
it was at an airport. It was at Ronald Reagan Airport. We met. I asked. We took a photo. He was very happy that I knew who he was. That he was appealing to the young generation. And I told him just like, I agree with your tactics. I think too many people are like falling for help apart for violent stuff and not realizing like there are drawbacks to using violence. There are drawbacks to being intolerant.
Of course.
And
I mean, this is, they had so much to not only learn from the experience with you, but to teach.
And the crazy thing is, the tutor who was against me being kicked out, she was not right wing. She was very left wing. But the reason she posed like that, she felt like if we want to change Eli's mind, she actually wanted to change my mind as well. But he said the best we do it is not through violence, not through force, not through labeling him a bad person and kicking him out. Yeah. It would be through communication. And she wanted to change my mind, making more left wing. Okay, that's okay. And she had to.
You weren't even right wing. That's the thing.
I was a centrist. I was centrist, exactly. And even if I was, so I was 15. I can't even vote.
You're 15. The purpose of school is to teach and, to learn. This could have been a really amazing learning experience for everyone involved, for the kid who accused you, for you, for even these administrators to learn the outer limits of what kids will go to when they're in a feud where I'm going to falsely accuse someone. This is a cry for help. In my personal opinion, this was also a cry for help for the other kid. The other kid does not know how to solve his own problems. He does not know how to confront people who he's in a feud with, clearly. He doesn't know how to stand up for himself appropriately, and he's accustomed to leveraging the power of powerful adults to solve his problems for him. He learned exactly nothing. And you, ironically, who got kicked out, you learned the most, because you learned how immature adults in these positions can be. You learned about yourself. You learned some things that you would do differently, and so forth and so on, and what you stand for, what you don't stand for, and so forth. And you went on to a better experience anyway. So you came out ahead. They botched it.
Although I will admit that year was, even after it came out, it definitely made my life harder. My family was more divided since it happened. I was sent to intensive treatment, which I should talk about in another interview with my friend Nate Gray. Sure. I went to that afterwards because they had this like mental health excuse. They use like my mental health disorders. They use like my mental disorders against me, which is like ableist and eugenicist, honestly, to say like, oh, we just can't have you here for this reason. I mean,
they accepted you in the first place, knowing all of those things.
Yeah, they did. We send them all my diagnosis, my medical history, my diagnostic history, and everything. We sent them here. And like thing is, like, I can handle a job. I'm like, honestly, I'm like Elon Musk has the same conditions that I do. So it's like,
yeah, I don't even think that would be classified as like mental illness. You're just talking about neurological, divergence and all that, which they claim, in sort of woke land, that they're all, excited to have everybody who's different and so on.
Exactly.
It's a hypocrisy of it. And I don't mean to belittle that this was traumatizing. Obviously it was. And I am not saying, they bullied you, they abused you, and they did so, in my opinion, because they're moral cowards who absolutely do not know how to behave as grown adults. They did not know how to handle the situation, or they did, but they have no moral courage. They didn't have enough courage, like I said, to go back to the other kid and say, all right, we dug around in Eli's stuff and we didn't find anything like that. What's going on? Why would you accuse him of that? Even if they didn't want to kick that kid out or punish him.
I never called him to be kicked out even. Like,
no, but they should have reached out to him and said, what is going on here?
Right. And yeah, exactly.
Why do you want him gone so badly that you would lie? Otherwise, you're just encouraging lying. How is this good for that kid? So I feel like these are some of the weakest adults I've ever heard of. Now, tell us a story of what happened after you get home, because that speaks more to the like getting kicked out is traumatizing enough. Especially, it should be noted, by the way, audience, that Eli had a 3.8 GPA and was an athlete.
Everyone had to be an athlete, so that's not really a flex.
My point is, you were making productive contributions to the community, and you were a good student. You're not a problem child on the campus, and even if you were, usually it's not first strike, goodbye. So,
And I didn't put that like, because obviously someone's like a 3.8 student, that does not exempt them from like consequences, of course. Like if I
That's
did
not what
something
I'm saying.
horrible,
I'm
oh no,
just
I'm
saying,
not saying, oh no,
yeah,
I'm not accusing you of anything. What I'm saying is like you're right, but I am saying that when I put that in there, I am saying that like I was not like doing horribly there. I was getting along with people. There's so many other times which I got people, a lot of students like hugged me goodbye on the last day. They were sad I was leaving. Even kids who had like minor disagreements with were sad I was leaving, and they messaged me afterwards.
right.
And so I put in my stuff there to let you know, like and the reason putting in the 3 point GPA and stuff is to tell you know that this could happen to anyone, no
That's
matter how
right.
well you're doing, and it could change at any moment, whether you
That's
make
right.
a mistake or not.
That's exactly right. And it ends up being like, I would say it was sort of a cross between the Dreyfus affair and it's like the cross between the Dreyfus affair maybe and like a Salem witch trial.
Right.
But you really were scapegoated and made, you know, thrown under the bus is the best way to say it, just to appease somebody they didn't want to deal with. And you're a human being,
And
and that to me that is like the worst thing you can do is I'm going to go ahead and abuse this person who has no standing in the sort of political or power hierarchy of this school's administration and so on, to cover my own butt. And
right,
then what did they do? So they get your parents, and they gave his parents almost no time to come and get him
right. It was like immediately. It was like right
from
away. It was
California to Vermont.
yeah, it was so mean. They said you have to take a flight, and like they sent someone. And then I felt really bad for her. But she had come really quickly, and I thought it was really awful. And it was just, it was like, it was crazy. Like they like that they should, like, even if I was a threat, they could just say okay, if I was like, that's like someone who's like, I don't know, committed like a violent or an assault or something like that. That's how you do something like that. Not someone who like had a few dumb jokes on his computer or sent some or like did
No,
stuff
but
that's
they
like
needed to remove their mistake
mm-hmm.
as quickly as possible. Like I said, I genuinely believe that having found nothing, they were so hoping
Mm-hmm.
to find something like big, and then
Oh yeah,
having found nothing, they had to get rid of you as quickly as
that's why I
possible so
said it
that
was a witch hunt. If you read the
absolutely.
Substack, one of the things they accused me of saying is Eli said this was a quote witch hunt unquote. But the thing is, that
It
word that
was.
I was right. I ended up that aged like wine, aged like fine wine when I said it was like a witch hunt, and
It
I was proven right.
it literally
And
was.
that dean, that dean no longer works there. I actually looked him up. I don't even know where he is now. And it
Yeah.
was like, and I don't know if VA has changed their policies or not, but I don't think so because they still haven't like they haven't acknowledged they were wrong to do this. And it was crazy with how they treated my parents afterwards. They finally sent back some stuff like months later. Um, I mean, some stuff. Well, I'm not going to bring that up because we were moving as well. So I don't think the VA lost my stuff. I do think they sent everything, and we might have lost a few things. But like, still, it's scary. They have like power. They can hold your stuff. They can kick you out for no reason. And then afterwards, I was putting treatment. I will admit though, there are a lot of other things that I left out of the story because they were too personal, about like my family, for example, because I don't need for them. I didn't even name anyone in the school, not even definitely not the other student, not even the head of school, who's a public figure.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's not. So you got home,
Mm-hmm.
you get back to California.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think, I would have thought as an adult, and certainly if I were, one of your parents, I would have been like, all right, so y'all are going to like now leave my kid alone and go on your merry way. You've done what you had to do. But I would have thought we would never, ever hear from them again unless they had
Although,
to
okay,
send you belongings or something, but that's it. But they were still communicating with you, weren't they?
Although I will, oh no, okay. So I'm not trying to vouch for them. I'm just gonna be honest here. They were not. My parents approved of all the communications with me. It was mostly my parents were contacting them to ask them like what went on. 'Cause they still didn't know everything that happened, even after I got sent home. Asking what went on. They asked like send home stuff. And they also asked like if they could like affirm to the other schools that I'm applying to that like Eli was not expelled, so they could like lie and about
But
it, which they
those
did.
are communications between them and your folks.
And then they
That's
also
yeah.
it was my parents actually asked the principal to write me the letter. And I will admit though, the first some of my family actually when they read the letter, they actually had to edit it because it had so much false information and it had stuff that was so incendiary. Like when I wished ill on the the pervert, that horrible man who like who like did horrible things to those
We're talking about Larry Nassar now.
Yes, we are. And
Right. So
my parents, like they removed, like someone removed that part because they thought, okay, Eli would barely would defend it. And so yeah, that's one of my issues with my family. I'm not gonna say which family member it was, but I found the original one. I found the original draft after years actually, and I thought, wow, it's outrageous. It also had some things that were blatantly false. Like they commented, it also said they commented a meme on someone. I commented a violent meme on someone else's page, which they actually admitted was not true, but they still put down the letter. And so it shows like they continue to double down these accusations. And the letter at the end, like what the principal wrote, that really caught me out was she said, please stay in touch with me as you update me on your social and emotional development. So creepy. That's like what a grandparent would write. Why would I want to update someone who's a gross, who like kicked me out? Well, here's the thing, head of school. This message for you. Here's my update for you now.
wow.
Here's
I
my
mean,
update
it's
now.
also creepy because this is a person who really abused you. I mean, allowed someone to lie about you, didn't allow you to speak up for yourself, didn't
Mhm.
take any steps whatsoever to behave like a
Oh, no.
mature, courageous adult to bring two people together and like solve a problem.
Mhm.
This is some of the absolute worst cowardice I've seen in a while. And then to sit there and keep me updated on your social emotional development. Well, Jennifer, that's the name of the head of school. She literally got, by the way, guys, I'm going to show you that because I think that's absolutely hilarious. Can you imagine being the head of a prep school and signing a letter to the entire community, Jennifer? Like, oh, what? How about, Dr. So-and-so, head of school? Like, have a
Mhm.
little self-respect. And, if you're going to use your authority to summarily throw someone out of school on the say-so of someone else, then, don't call yourself Jennifer. How about
Mhm.
that? It's just so creepy. And your social and emotional development were, if anything, harmed by this whole experience. I'm actually impressed that you didn't get more cynical and more, mistrustful than you did.
Mhm.
Because if I'd been through something like that, I wouldn't trust adults in positions of
Alright.
authority for anything. This is really, really poor behavior. And I noticed that there were some reviews, and you put them in your Substack
Mhm.
that are very bad about this school. And I've noticed, by the way, this is true now of a lot of prep schools. If you go look up their reviews, private schools, they're getting things like these 1-star reviews saying, don't send my kid to this school.
And
Um,
and with the bottom one, I wouldn't put every negative 1 star because like that's just someone's opinion. But this guy is a coach of 15 years, and he's experienced here. I'd fully trust this review. Like it's the grammar, the writing, everything. It's honestly better grammar than the principal than the headmaster by far.
right.
And
And they allow cases of bullying to go on.
mhm,
They allow all kinds of violations of rules, and then they selectively enforce the rules. So
mhm,
now, one of the things that you pointed out in your Substack, you learned a lot from
mhm,
this experience about what you would have done differently. And I want to share that with the audience because they might have a kid in school, whether it's a private school or even
mhm.
really any school. And I'm sure you want to make sure that their kids have that
Oh, yeah.
information. So what would you
When
do
I wrote
differently?
this, it was not just about me. This is to anyone who's like going through these schools, anyone who went through a similar experience like me. I want people to feel open about expressing what happens because like multi-million,
Yeah,
like our country wasn't founded so multi-million-dollar institutions can just get away with treating people without any criticism. We like it's not if it's not illegal, we definitely can speak out because it's our right to speak about
that's right.
if we. It's all right, and like people target private individuals for so much less, but these aren't individuals; these are like multi-million-dollar institutions.
Right. Well, and let's get real. We talk, there she is saying we're, the leaders of the 21st century and so forth and so on. Where did Claudine Gay go to school again? Didn't she go to like Andover, Exeter, or one of those, or she went to a prep school?
Mhm,
And then, so the people who end up in positions of leadership in America, like it or not, predominantly go to these schools. They
mhm.
go to private schools. I'm not saying there are no public school graduates who end up in, positions of power,
Mhm.
but the
Reagan
vast
was one.
majority of them. I'm sorry?
Ronald Reagan, he went to a
Ronald
public
Reagan
school.
did, yes. But the vast majority of people in power right
Mhm.
now went to schools just like Vermont Academy. They went to prep
True.
schools. They went to Ivy League colleges or at least top tier colleges. They went to private graduate schools. So what happens in these private schools does matter to all of us.
Mhm.
They claim to be educating the leaders of tomorrow, and they in fact are. So they do create a kind of new aristocracy. And the only thing that used to protect us as Americans against a real aristocracy, meaning like, okay, they can be in their little elite bubble of I send my kids to Exeter and Andover and, St. Paul's and all this, and they're going to get a better job than your kids. The only thing that could really protect us was people still, they're still being sort of merit and being politically equal. In other words, that somebody could not literally punish you, keep your money, wreck your record and your reputation purely because you disagreed politically. That was something that was just sacrosanct in America. Like, all right, you have more money than I do and so on, and you might be able to push me around a little bit, but you can't destroy me because we have different political opinions. That was like, that's European. That's like not American to do.
Right.
And now that's what they're doing. So these same elite people are saying there's an elite set of opinions to go with their elite set of, income levels. And they're coming up with new and extra ways to subdivide us and have power over us. They're creating a kind of a philosophical elite.
Oh, what was that noise?
What noise?
Sorry.
Oh,
sorry.
is it me? Okay. So
No. Sorry. Might have been.
No, but it's important because I think a lot of people say, "Oh, that's private school. It doesn't have anything to do with me." Like it has everything to do with you, because someday your child might end up working for one of these people or being represented by one of these people in Congress or having them be running for president, or just employing a bunch of them. Your child could end up being a boss and hiring people who have this entitled attitude that they should get to take over and run things out from under you because they're better than you for some reason. So there's a lot of abuse that's going on. And I just want to make sure people understand that, this private school isn't automatically better. First of all, it might arguably be worse.
Oh yeah.
And the snobbery is not dead. Don't let them fool you.
And I was talking about the last thing, which is very unusual experience, is that like the best school I ever had, because I went to a few schools before VA and a few after. The best school I had was a public school back in the Bay Area. And even though they definitely had a lot of like left politics, they were good because they tolerated different differences of opinion, and they were actually diverse, not just in opinion, but also like in race and national origin. Like they didn't preach diversity. They didn't say we are going to fight against the insidious power of racism. They were like, I mean, I'm sure they would, but they actually had like Black, Latino, Asian staff. There's actually no racial majority at the school they finished at. I'm like, that's great. And I mean, just because we're
the one thing you can say, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, just because like we're against like these these diversity programs and DEI stuff doesn't mean we're against actual diversity. Diversity can be a good thing if it's not. I just
don't call it diversity.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean the problem is I think it's really important to use language, to avoid using the language of this kind of movement. It's a sort of an anti-reason movement to use a term like diversity. What you're just talking about is you're talking about making sure that you have a heterodoxy of thought, that you that you take into account different perspectives. Different perspectives can come in bodies that all look the same. Having a different way that you look or different hair texture or whatever doesn't mean that your opinions are different. So I do think there's value. I don't know that anybody would disagree that there's value when, especially in an educational setting, of allowing a wide range of opinions to be openly expressed and debated and discussed. And that is the essence of a liberal education, is everyone gets to speak as long as you're civil and you're respectful and you bring your evidence and you allow yourself to be questioned and you allow for the possibility that you might be wrong, whoever you are. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you come from. As long as you're willing to agree with those tenets, then we can all be here in the same space. And that's what America and liberal education used to be about. Not liberal as in political liberal, but liberal philosophical liberal. We don't have a one train of thought, one worldview. And in Vermont Academy is illiberal. Let's be
Absolutely.
very clear about it. It is illiberal because for them to classify Breitbart as incendiary,
Mhm.
okay, we're not talking about explosive. First of all, is a meaningless term because in relation to what? There's nothing in the rule book that says I can't look at incendiary
Oh.
things or read incendiary things. Bet there's not even anything in the rule book that says I can't share them with other students. It has to do with what was the intention behind it and what were you saying in accordance with it. Like, for example, if you took something from a political site and then sent it out to the whole campus and said, all of you should be blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's an aggressive thing to do. It's not because of the opinion, it's the aggressive nature of the But for you privately to look at something, who was hurt? So the message there is there we have a victimless situation of private consumption of information in a free country at a
Mhm.
school that claims to be deeply committed to
Mhm.
compassion and love and fighting racism,
Mhm.
and yet we're not going to be tolerant of that. That to me is illiberalism on steroids, and they should own it. You know, if they want to be a one worldview school, they should tell the parents that's what it is. So your advice to people if they find themselves in a situation of being falsely accused is what?
I have two things. I wrote them both in the Substack for further detail. But what I said is like one, record everything or make sure it's all recorded. So like they can't just do things you can get away with. And two, and do not apologize if you're being accused by people who don't apologize because that is like an admission of guilt. And when you say you're sorry, they'll just say, "Well, you better be," or "I'm sure you are," and then they'll use that apology as like a form of submission against you. It
Yes.
is really ill-advised to apologize. Now, I'm not saying you should never apologize ever. There are times in which it's good to acknowledge our faults. We none of us are perfect. This is
Right.
true in, like, in relationships, especially with people who we love or people who just we who like who deserve an apology because we treat them the wrong way by accident. That's fair. But to apologize when the school will who to people who are doing worse things to you, and they're sure as hell not going to apologize.
No.
There's no need. You should not do that. It makes you look weak. When I see people who get canceled and then they apologize, I'm like, that's so sad. And it's like you're just like they say, giving yourself up for nothing.
Okay.
It's like that. It's like I think
It's
I
also
quoted
blood in the water now.
right.
Once you do that, if you apologize for something when you didn't do anything wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you're not done. Now they're going to come back and there's more. You
Mm-hmm.
legitimize the way you were treated. And what happened to you is symptomatic of abusive relationships period. So
Mm-hmm.
that school in my opinion has an abusive relationship with its students, and I include your accuser in that because
Mm-hmm.
enabling is a form of neglect.
Mm-hmm.
Enabling somebody who clearly needs some guidance is not helpful. So I think when you apologize, it's you're kind of feeding that beast. Now, you didn't do anything wrong. I don't mean to sound like critical. You're 15,
Yeah.
so you're just saying this is what you learned and hope somebody else can learn from it. And the recording is always good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this situation you were in case anyone's wondering who's watching or listening to this, where he's alone, he's away from home, he's brought into a dean's office, give me your
Mm-hmm.
phone, give me your passwords, all these kind of things. You know, Eli didn't know that he had the option to
Mm-hmm.
say no. So,
Mm-hmm.
in other words, just because the policy says we have a right to look at your stuff, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean we have a right to look at your stuff without any evidence at all, without just any old time we want. Okay. And even if it does say that, they can't make him do it. So in other words, he still had the option to say no or not until.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that you have this authority under the rules. However, I'm not going to give it to you until we have my parents, at least on the phone or video, whatever, to discuss the situation, until I get to hear the accusations against me, until the other person who made the accusations is present so that I can, face this person, until there are a few conditions. Then, because it's my password. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
just going to hand it over. Now, he does run the risk. Any kid runs the risk and they're going to find that we're just kicking you out. But think about
Mm-hmm.
it for a second. Then the story gets out. The kid was kicked out because he wouldn't hand over his private password after being falsely accused and denied any access to his parents, denied access to his accuser. It was just, you're summarily kicked out because you wouldn't let us pry around in your computer or your phone. That's not a very good story for the school to have to tell. So it's still in your best interest to say, no, I'm not giving it to you. I'm not doing it. Because people can do all kinds of things in terms of, I have the authority to do it. But you can't make me do what you say. So this is something Americans in general need to learn about life of any age. And Eli, I hope you take this one to the bank. People have all kinds of authorities over you. They can point to a piece of paper and say, I can fire you. I can kick you out of school. I can do this. The simple answer is, yep, you can. But you can't tell me what to do. You can't make me do the thing you want me to do, because what would that involve? Physical force. Okay. So never give in to somebody who's falsely accusing you of something. Ever. Set conditions. Tell them I will when these conditions are met, because I have rights too, and see what happens. And you'll learn a lot about the situation. So that'd be kind of my little tidbit of advice. And I know there's probably people going, oh, you make it sound so easy. I'm like, it's as easy as saying no. No is a complete sentence.
It is. But there are also many challenges as well, because after I kicked out of school, there are many things I had to go through. And if I refused downright, there would be a different set of challenges.
That's right.
And life is meant to be hard. But then again, as Teddy Roosevelt said, Teddy Roosevelt has never envied anyone who led an easy life. And if you live without challenging, and as like Mark Twain said, you're going to regret far more the things you did not do rather than things you did.
That's right. And it's so important for your own self-respect, right? Because you mentioned how when you got home and you're like, oh, why did I apologize? And and then this happened and that happened. The punishment we give ourselves, the beating we give ourselves when things don't go well, or especially when somebody else treats us poorly. Because then we always think, I should have stood up for myself. I should have done this. I should have protected myself better. I shouldn't have allowed this. That hurts almost more than anything the other people did to us. Because when we know somehow deep down, I think, as people, that when other people mistreat us, that's their thing. That's on them. They mistreated us. But when we let them to any degree, that's on us. And I think that hurts so much more. So when it comes to your kids, teaching them about boundaries and teaching them when it's okay to politely, no one is suggesting that you would have said, no, I'm not going to do it, but just say, all right, I understand that you do have that authority per the school rules. However, I am very concerned because what it sounds like is I've been falsely accused. So I before I'm going to give you access to this information, you need to, demonstrate that I've done something wrong. You need to have reason, like a probable cause, to go through all my stuff. So you have to hold their feet to the fire a little bit more than just go, okay, here you go. I've got nothing to hide. And I know what the good people walk into this trap all the time. Good people speak to police without a lawyer present. I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to hide. Never, ever do that. It's like the kid who gets out of the car when they fender bender. I'm sorry. Like, oh no, here we go. Like, don't do that. So that's my little 2 cents. Now, as far as what you've learned about just education in general from this whole thing. Now, yours was a private school. You went private school, then you got a better situation at public. Public, at least you got more civil rights. I hate to say it,
and better staff and better staff, better people, better education. I felt like I was like a human then, like much more freedom, and the people were much nicer at public school. And I mean, I know I'm rare for saying that, but I'll admit that. I mean, this is a Bay Area public school, so it might be different elsewhere. But like, I was very proud to graduate from there. I was very thankful for them, and like in their education, they teach multiple perspectives, which is crazy. This was in California.
Well, that's very good news, because obviously the news out of California is generally pretty bad. But and as you know, I'm a government school abolitionist, so I just don't think there should be government running schools. But I want to be very clear, that doesn't mean that because a school is private, it is automatically better. Sometimes it's worse. And so the important thing for parents to understand is you've got to teach your kids about boundaries. You've got to teach your kids about their rights. You've got to be there for them. It's pretty common when parents are faced with a school coming to them or saying, we're disciplining your kid, we're kicking your kid out, it's so common for parents to be like, what did you do? Or to be inclined to take the school's side or to believe the school.
Mhm.
And I'm not suggesting that parents immediately get their back up. In fact,
Mhm.
don't do that, because that doesn't set a very good example for your child either. Look at the kid that accused you.
Mhm.
The kid that
Mhm.
accused you probably has gotten that message. My kid is never wrong, right? We don't want that. But what
Mhm.
I'm saying is, model for your kid that we wait and we get the evidence. So I see. So he's accused of doing what? All right. So you have evidence.
Like, take
Okay.
a neutral position.
You take a very neutral position and gather everything you can get. Say nothing. Take no one's side. It sets a really good example for everyone involved. And then after you've had a chance to say, I'm going to need some time to digest this, even if it happened in the middle, like come down to the school, whatever, I wouldn't react. I would just be like, all right, I'll be right there. Give me all the information. Okay, I'll get back to you. Like, count to 10 and don't take a position one way or the other. Make sure you give your child a chance to explain, hear out the school, think about common sense, what you know from your kid, what you know from the school, what their evidence is, and then make a decision. But ultimately, if you jump right in and say like, oh, pretty please forgive my child, or, like, oh, don't hurt. If you take this school's position from the word go, the risk of alienating your child and teaching them that
Mhm.
they cannot trust you is so high. I would definitely err on the side of, especially if you've never had a bad situation with your kid, definitely err on the side of giving your child the benefit of the doubt and letting them tell you what happened. Case in point, my daughter was accused of biting someone
Oh
in
my.
5th grade. And she was so upset. She was called to the office and the counselor and the whole thing. And we had a biting incident. They called me up and so on. And I said, what happened? He'd tell me, where was it? What was going on at the time? I get as many details as I possibly could from their point of view. And then I said, all right, well, I'll speak with her. I said, I'll speak with her and I'll get back to you. Then I spoke to my daughter and I said, all right, she got in the car. She's like, Mommy, and they're accusing me and it's not true. And I said, calm down. Tell me what happened in your words. I've already spoken with Ms. So-and-so, whatever. Tell me what happened. So she told me what happened. She told me all the things. Now, the interesting thing is their details were identical. They did where it happened, when it happened, who said what and so forth.
Mhm.
But my daughter's account, knowing the school, because I'd volunteered a little bit there, knowing the schools I did, my daughter's account made absolute sense. Her biting someone aggressively made no sense. It was not in character, nothing. So she said, Mom, you know how when you go and you have to get from the ramp and then go up onto the upper thing and there's a bar there to hold the handle, and she had her hands on the bar and I was trying to duck under rather than go around the corner. She goes, if I did anything wrong, is I should have gone around the corner. I should have waited in line, and I didn't want to wait in line because I had to go to the bathroom. As a kid's 10. And she's like, so I kind of cut, which, maybe I shouldn't have done, but I kind of cut and I ducked my head under. And she tried to get me to stop. The other girl had her hands on the bar and said, no, you can't put her hands on my daughter's face. So like
Oh.
she's ducking under, the girl's hands are on the bar and she goes, no, you can't cut under, and happened to hit her mouth is open, hits her in the teeth. You can imagine the scenario, right?
Yeah.
Then the girl goes, you bit me. Oh my God, you bit me. And I said, because I asked the woman, I said, did she break the skin? Well, no. And I'm like, did she give a reason? Well, no, she says she didn't do it. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll talk. So I went back to the school and I said, all right, here's what I think happened. And I'm just going to tell you straight up, my daughter didn't bite anyone. I think this was an unfortunate situation. She's learned her lesson that she shouldn't cut in line, but she did not bite anybody. And I think it might be a good idea to have a conversation with the other person that it's not a good idea to accuse someone of attacking you or assaulting you when in fact it was an accident.
Mhm.
And that might not be a bad idea. But no, I'm not going to have my daughter take the heat for biting someone when she did not bite her. And there's no broken skin. There was no evidence of it, that the bite even happened. It was like a little tiny mark, like an indentation. And so this was much ado about nothing. But imagine if I'd said, what did you do? Why did you bite this girl? And if she said it, it must be true. My daughter would never trust me. And so now I'm pleased to have a 15-year-old that comes to me first. Now she's homeschooled, but still she comes to me. She tells me all the things and trusts me. And she'll even say, like, that was a moment when she realized, like, okay, mom has my back.
Mm-hmm.
And I did say to her, I said, you're not supposed to cut in line. Like
Mm-hmm.
that you shouldn't have done, because that can cause accidents. What if somebody tripped over you? What if it, so I know, I learned I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. That's true. So she was willing to admit to the things she did wrong. She just wasn't going to take the heat for biting someone. So these situations where you weren't there and nobody was there, somebody's got to speak on behalf. And that's where parents can come in, and it's a really good learning moment. And I just feel like you didn't have that opportunity because they didn't even call your parents.
Oh, they actually did.
Before they searched your stuff?
Oh,
Or
after
after?
they searched my stuff, but before they kicked me out. So they searched my
No.
stuff
But I'm
on.
saying before they searched your
Oh
stuff.
no,
See,
they
that's
didn't.
what I'm saying is like, Eli's accused of XYZ. That should have triggered a phone call.
Yeah, definitely. They should have done that. Talk to the parents first.
Taking a 15-year-old privately, isolating him from everybody, including his own family, into a room and saying, we are now going to violate your privacy in a massive way.
Mm-hmm.
Because of an accusation. The phone call should have happened before that. That was way out of bounds, in my opinion. No one was in.
Friend. Well, at the next school I went to, I grew close with a man who's in his mid-60s now. He's an administrator, and then I emailed him my Substack after I published it, and then he said that in his 19 years of being an administrator, he has never seen anyone act so unprofessional as Vermont Academy, and this is what he means because he's an administrator for decades. Wait, no, sorry, not 19. I think it was 30 years, actually. 30 years.
Yeah.
And
well, that's exactly my point, is that doesn't even follow the most basic protocols of disciplining someone. And I also strongly suspect, and you and I have talked about this in conversations before today, that at some point in the history of this event, they had a conversation with the school's lawyers.
I believe you.
And that part of why they were doing we keep in touch and all this, and, hope you're okay, whatever. It was to do a CYA about how they did all this to keep you guys just happy enough, and just, that you didn't wake up and go, wait a minute, none of this happened the way it should have happened. And they didn't want a lawsuit because whatever the rules say, and I'm sure they're, in the small print, they have all kinds of authority. But regardless, lawsuit is never completely off the table, especially when you're keeping thousands and thousands of dollars of somebody's money and you're making them fly across the country to come get their kid. Lawsuit, at least for damages, as far as the costs associated with what they did to you, that's never completely off the table. So they probably had to do a CYA. They acted precipitously. They acted recklessly. They did so for some of the worst reasons, in my personal opinion. And that's a word to the wise. Those of you who are thinking, I'm going to send my kid to private school and that's going to save them from whatever ills are going on in my local public school, don't be so sure.
And I'm definitely not saying, and I would never ever say send them to a public school, not a private school. I would never say that. My advice is send it based on the school's reviews, right? Based on schools administration, and that they look at their administration, look at their teachers, look at their discipline records, look at their former students. And
ask a lot of questions, and also recognize that they're not always going to tell the truth. So you ask about somebody's discipline policies, they might say one thing, and that's why you have to read the reviews. That's why you have to back up everything they say with talking to multiple different members of the faculty, not just the head of the school. It's a little bit of an art form to deal with this, but the bottom line for me is that in your situation is a great example of why we increasingly need to teach our children things that might violate their innocence a little bit, in order to prepare them to be out amongst people in their schools. Like, school is not automatically a safe place for your child's mental, emotional health, academic record, all of these things. Treat it with caution. And, you like I said, you may have to say to an elementary school kid, don't answer questions without mom there. Don't be rude, but make sure you call me if something happens, if they try to discipline you. And I've had people say, but isn't that so very mistrustful and cynical? And this, I'm like, they have control of your child all day. And in your case, all night too.
Yeah.
So why would you not prepare your child and say, look, anything weird happens, anybody's talking to you and making you feel threatened in any way, Immediately call. Say, you know what? We'll deal with the password thing, but I need to make a phone call to my parents first. And when I can get them on the phone and we can discuss what's about to happen, then we'll talk about the password. Can you give me half an hour? Or can you at least let me reach them? Can we do that? And because like I said, think about, are they going to go, no? Who's in danger? Who's in imminent danger?
I think they would have actually said no. They would have said, well, they said, oh, we'll do that after we do this. They'll say, we'll do it after.
And then, but if you had known that the correct answer was like, well, there isn't going to be an after until I speak to my parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As long as, and you know what I might have said is there the possibility that this could result in me being sent home? Is that even on the table in this conversation? And if they had said yes, which they would have, I mean, if it was even remotely on the table, guilty, not guilty, whatever, is that even one of the options of what could happen to me? And if they said, well, then my parents absolutely need to be involved because I live on the other side of the country. They paid tuition for me to be here. This affects them as much as it affects me. They need to be involved in this conversation. Absolutely. We're going to wait for them. And I would love to have been a fly on the wall. If you'd said something like that, they'd probably be like, now what do we do? He's not wrong. I mean, think about it.
Right.
Like, you're not wrong. And any professional person, any decent professional would have said, well, that's a good point. Sure, fine. We'll wait. No, we're going to sneak into a dark room and take the 15-year-old kid and like completely upend his family's life and then report back. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So your friend, whoever this gentleman was,
like, I think that these schools, I think these administrators at the school, they had this delusion that like, oh, if they do it behind closed doors, it will never reach the public. They will not be. They will not be under
Jennifer,
any, like,
it's public now. It's very public. I mean, you've got your Substack, but now it's here. And then, you know, you've talked to lots of other people. You've talked to Paul Rossi. You've talked to who else have you spoken with? I mean, you've been to Freedom
not that
Fest.
many people.
But so you've spoken to lots of people who are more public than I am.
I've sent it to some, and so some of them like refuse to cover it. I'm not going to say who exactly, but some have refused to cover it. And like, that's fine. This happened a long time ago. Or some of them, I think some.
Well, it's right up my alley because I cover education, so of course I'm going to cover it. And also, I wanted to talk to you because there's not enough coverage of what goes on in the private schools.
Absolutely.
And with school choice ramping up as this whole, it's the solution. It's the magic solution to everything is school choice. And I'm over here going, no, it's not, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly. Like a lot of people, even people on the right, and I was making clear, not myself, this should not be a left or right issue, but unfortunately people on the right are often more involved in like holding schools accountable for stuff like this. But like a lot of people think like, oh, it's a public school, so you need to go. And I respect your opinion as a public school abolitionist. I respect that and I understand that, and you might not even be wrong. However, the idea that like private schools are somehow more trustworthy.
No, no, they're
people
not.
Think they're so trustworthy and that like private schools are all better, like automatically, and that's just a delusion. And people should know that, like, in some ways they are worse in some ways, and that like they can just do something. They have like no due process, and like I see a lot of like online articles like can schools search your phones? Like there's like a lot of debates about this, and they say private schools can if you sign a contract, but public schools,
it's in the small print.
They cannot.
Well, and here's the thing: if part of why I'm a government school abolitionist is that I want all of this to be so decentralized that the incentives change at schools, period. So in other words, one of the reasons the private schools can get away with the nonsense they get away with is they feel like, just like some politicians feel like, well, what other choices do you have, right? So when the government has a monopoly on 98% of the money that can go into education, and it's probably more like 99%. So they monopolize that money and they monopolize the curriculum, monopolize if parents want something different, they have very few choices but private schools. And the private schools know that. So people send their kids to private schools for a wide variety of reasons, usually having to do with wanting to get away from something they don't want. It's ironically not as much because, ooh, this offers me something awesome that I do want. It's more about this is better than that other garbage. So if you didn't have that other garbage, if all the schools were private, if all the schools had to compete with each other for the dollars and for the audience, then the market would solve it, right? So Vermont Academy wouldn't stay in business very long because it'd be competing with, any of the number of thousands and thousands of other, private schools that people could go to that treat people properly. They don't have mice in the dorms and God only knows what else that they're allowing to run down because they're, hey, what other choice do you have? So it's in part because of the monopoly that the private schools can be as tyrannical as they are. These incentives feed off each other. People have no other choices, or the people who choose to go there for some elite status. That's how they get their elite status, because there's no elite status to go into the public thing. Do away with it, and you do away with all of that. The only elite status then becomes quality, because everyone would have theoretically equal access to get to any of these schools just by do you have room? And I apply first and I can get there. They're competing with each other. And then the only thing, it's sort of like, why do you buy one car over another? Why do you buy one TV over another? Why do you go to one restaurant over another? Well, guess what? If schools operated the same way, we wouldn't have these problems. That's why I'm an abolitionist. It's not like I think public or private or this or that. I would like this to be a parenting decision. Like, when am I going to feed my kids? Where are we going to live? Where are we going, for vacation? Why is how your child is educated a decision that you have to involve all these other people in, and it's so important. It's so very important to, the life of a child. You're going to spend 13 years or however many years getting an education. I can't think of anything more important for parents to choose. So when I say, school choice and I roll my eyes, people go, but don't you think the parents should have a choice? Of course I do. I just think they should have all the choices, meaning the money should stay in their wallet, not, hi, we took your money and now you can ask us to use some of it to go to one of these 20 places. Yay, choice. It's like, wait, but the money still goes to you? Yes. But why? Because reasons. I mean, it's not really choice, is it?
I'm also, I have to admit, I'm not fully educated in the school choice debate.
Yeah, but that's the only reason why. So you could have a great public school, but then there are other kids in the San Francisco area, in the Bay Area, who do not. So we can't even generalize and say that. And that's the problem.
I want to be very careful when I talk about my public school. I'm saying this one specifically was good. I would never ever say they're all generally good, because there are some horrible public school experiences that many people have.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, because oftentimes they just don't hold teacher accountable. They have teachers who've been there forever, cannot get fired.
Right.
And there's
unions and this and that. And so much depends upon, as you pointed out, the other students and their families at the school and how involved they are. There's so many factors, but the one common thread that I will allow is that at a public school, ironically, you do have more civil rights. There is a limit to what they can do in terms of the disciplining of the student without evidence, without justification, because you are subject to the same rights that you would have out in public. There is no fine print of a contract that you signed. Whereas at a private school, you can sign away your civil rights. And that I think makes it more dangerous in that respect. So I would agree with you there. So what's next for you? So you're in college and you're getting the word out about this situation. Do you feel like in general, people are starting to catch on that students are having these kinds of experiences, and that maybe they're waking up to the reality of it? Have you've personally had a good response and people believe you? And
for the most part, I don't tell everyone, because a lot of people, you don't just go around telling everyone the worst experiences in one's life. And
sure.
For me, it's also that I don't know, there's something, but there definitely are people who agree, yeah, that's messed up. I've sent some people in my Substack if they were interested, of course, and some of them really some of them liked it. Some of them were wow, that shows a lot, and so I do think that people are going to wear out. I definitely know that in college, I'm not going to say which college, but in college that I was at, there was a similar case in which a student accused me of something. I'm not going to, but then the student who accused something, the staff, what they did? They instead said, okay, both of you are not allowed to talk to each other ever again. And then they let me have a meeting with the director of the program who did that. She showed me the screenshots. It was also social media messaging. of what they did wrong. But then I was like, okay, thank you for telling me. And then I showed my screenshots of the other student did wrong and actually proved. And then the staff she actually agreed with me, saying like, okay, we actually agree. We actually know you're actually innocent in this case. So both of you are not allowed to talk to each other. This was at a college, and people act like colleges are so much worse than high schools. This was so mature, and I was like, and this is one of the reasons that I was inspired to create my Substack, was because this really good experience shows like institutions can handle it well.
Yes. I mean, I think the moral of the story is, don't generalize in general. It's not, I'm not anti-school. I'm anti doing it wrong, and what you've just described, both at the public school you went to and then also at college, is what I said at the first place. Like, mature adults in an educational institution use these opportunities to teach. That's why the students are there, to learn. Now, I think one takeaway from all of this is that maybe social media and maybe doing things online when we're trying to interact with other humans about controversial issues is not the best idea, and we should take it to, offline. But
I might even
learning
take this step further and say that like I wish that my generation, that kids like me, were not exposed to social media so young, that not every kid had to have like internet phones and everything. I wish like we had like, instead to share music, we had like, flip phones and cameras, and we had the cameras take pictures, flip phones to text, like other form of GPS to navigate. And I wish like social media wasn't so popular. I wish people, like the number of people didn't communicate wasn't social media, leaving people who didn't have those things feeling outcasted, even as young as like 12.
Right.
And I think that's a problem for society. However, it wasn't me or anyone you mentioned who started this trend. So
Exactly. Well, Eli, I'm really glad that you decided to share your story with me and then also with my audience. There's been a lot of it. I mean, seriously, I appreciate it. I know it's kind of hard to, talk about publicly and everything, but I hope it will benefit other parents. It might get them thinking about things they hadn't even thought about. Like, wow, I never even thought that could happen. Yes, it can happen. Whether your kid's in private school or public school, they might find themselves on the receiving end of a false accusation for any number of things. And you need to be prepared. How do you want them to deal with it? How should they deal with it? And, there's some lessons here in your story. So to read the Substack, you go to the description below and I will put the link there and you can get all the details. There's a lot we kind of skimmed over, but you can get all the, the blow by blow in there of everything that happened. And I'm not sorry, Vermont Academy, you deserve to come under scrutiny. I think the way you behaved was very bad. You're more than welcome to come publicly if you like and explain yourselves to my audience, Jennifer.
Please.
But yeah, please do explain yourself, give your point of view, because I don't see any excuse whatsoever.
I already know what they're going to say. They say, we must do our best to keep our students safe or something like that. Because that was the excuse they gave. They said we had to keep the students safe. But here's the problem, though. They were not doing that at all. There are many cases of actual bullying that went unchecked. The best staff members quit after reporting instances that nothing happened. Bully students, if the kid's a bully and his parents are on the board, they are welcome back in.
Well, as I said, if you're trying to cultivate this community of compassion and openness and love, like you say in your email, and you also claim that you are preparing, it's the mission of the school that they'll be honed to meet the ever evolving needs and demands of the 21st century. If you think that you have to keep kids safe from a bumper sticker and some Breitbart pop-ups because that's somehow endangering them, I'm pretty sure the 21st century is not for them. Maybe they need to build a time machine and head on back to a prior time or wrap them in some bubble wrap because they're not ready. This is not equality and love. This is not compassion. This is not openness. This is a kind of fragility that is brittle and pathetic, actually. It's really pathetic. You're not educating leaders. You're educating bullies. Passive, aggressive, relational bullies who are going to go out in the world and make it a much less pleasant place. That's my take on it. So anyway, thank you all for watching. And again, I'll put all the information down in the description. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.